the kind that settled into your clothes and stayed there long after the day was done. It was the same wind that had followed her all the way back to town, as if it knew she did not belong here anymore. She stepped down from the stagecoach, boots hitting the ground with a firmness she did not quite feel inside. This place had once been home, but now it felt like a memory that refused to fade. People paused to look at her. Not openly, not rude, but curious in that quiet, watchful way small towns had. They remembered her, of course they did. A girl who left without looking back always gave folks something to talk about. But she was not the same girl anymore. The road had changed her. Time had hardened something in her heart, something she had no intention of softening again. She adjusted the sleeves of her worn blue dress and started walking. The town had not changed much. Same wooden storefronts, same creaking signs, same smell of horses and dry earth. Only one thing felt different. Him. She had not seen him yet, but she could feel it. Like a storm waiting just over the horizon. The letter had been clear. Too clear. Her father had written it with his usual steady hand, no room for argument, no softness in his words. He spoke of duty, of promises made years ago, of land and survival. And then, as if it were the simplest thing in the world, he told her she was to marry him, the cowboy she hated. Her jaw tightened at the thought. She had spent years trying to forget him, trying to leave behind every memory tied to this place. But his face had always lingered, sharp and stubborn, just like the man himself. He had been trouble even back then. Too proud, too reckless, too sure of himself. And now he was her fiancé. The word felt wrong in her mind, like a bad fit that refused to settle. She had not agreed to it. She had not been asked. It was decided for her, like her life was just another deal to be struck. A horse neighed somewhere nearby, pulling her thoughts back to the present. She slowed her steps as she passed the old fence near the edge of town. That was when she saw him. Leaning against a wooden post, hat tilted low, arms crossed like he had all the time in the world. The same broad shoulders, the same steady stance. But there was something else now, something heavier in the way he carried himself. He had seen her too. Of course he had. Their eyes met, and for a moment the whole town seemed to fall silent. The years between them disappeared in an instant, replaced by everything they had never said, the anger. The pride, the history, neither of them could outrun. He pushed himself off the post and took a slow step forward. Not rushed, not hesitant. Just certain. "You came back?" he said, his voice calm but edged with something she could not quite place. She stopped a few feet away, holding her ground. "Didn't have much of a choice." A faint smile touched his lips, but it was not kind. "Seems like we both didn't." The words hung between them, heavier than the dust in the air. She wanted to turn away, to walk straight past him and never look back. But she couldn't. Not this time. "Let's make one thing clear," she said, her voice steady despite the storm rising inside her. "This arrangement means nothing to me." He studied her for a long moment, his gaze sharp, unreadable. Then he nodded once, slow and deliberate. "That's so?" he replied. "Then you might want to hear what your father didn't tell you." Her chest tightened, a sudden unease settling deep in her bones. "What are you talking about?" He took another step closer, close enough now that she could see the dust on his shirt, the faint scar along his jaw she did not remember. "This ain't just about land," he said quietly. "And it sure ain't just about us." She felt the ground shift beneath her certainty. "Then what is it about?" He held her gaze, and for the first time she saw something unexpected in his eyes, worry. And just like that, she realized coming back to this town had been a bigger mistake than she ever imagined. She searched his face, trying to decide if he was playing some kind of trick. He had always been good at keeping things to himself, saying just enough to stir trouble and nothing more. But this felt different. There was no teasing in his eyes now, no careless confidence. Just something tight, like he was holding back words that mattered. "Say it plain," she said, folding her arms again, more to steady herself than to challenge him. "I didn't come all this way for riddles." He let out a slow breath and glanced past her toward the town. A wagon rolled by in the distance, the driver tipping his hat without slowing down. Life carried on around them, unaware of the weight pressing between the two of them. "Your father didn't just call you back for a wedding," he said. "He called you back because things are changing, fast." She frowned. Things are always changing. That don't explain anything. It does when men start showing up with money and papers, he replied. Men who don't belong here. That caught her attention. What kind of men? The kind who buy land that ain't for sale, he said. Or find ways to take it anyway. A chill crept through her, though the evening air was still warm. She had seen men like that before out on the road. Smooth talkers with polished boots and cold eyes. They carried law in their pockets and trouble in their wake. What does that have to do with me? She asked. Everything, he said. Your family's land sits right in the middle of what they want. She shook her head. No, that land's been ours for years. Nobody can just take it. That's what your father thought too, he said quietly. Something in his tone made her stomach drop. What are you not saying? He hesitated, and for a moment she saw the same stubborn boy she used to argue with, the one who would rather bite his tongue than admit something was wrong. But this was not about pride anymore. They've already started pushing, he said. Fences cut, water rights questioned. A few threats made when no one's around to hear them. Her hands curled into fists. Why didn't he write that in the letter? Because he didn't want you staying away, he answered. He knew you'd come back if you thought he needed you. She looked down at the dirt beneath her boots, anger and guilt twisting together inside her. That sounded like her father. Stubborn, protective, always carrying more than he let on. And the marriage? She asked after a moment. Where does that fit into all this? He met her eyes again, steady this time. It ties our land together. Makes it harder for anyone to break it apart. She let out a bitter laugh. So I'm just part of a plan now? You were always part of it, he said, not unkindly. Same as me. That stung more than she expected. She had spent years believing she had escaped this place, escaped the expectations that came with it. But standing here now, it felt like nothing had really changed. The same dirt, the same rules, the same man standing in front of her. You could have said no, she said, her voice quieter now, back when this was first decided. He looked away for a brief second, jaw tightening. Could have, but I didn't. Why not? He did not answer right away. The silence stretched, filled only by the distant sound of wind brushing through dry grass. Because some things are bigger than what we want, he finally said. She studied him, searching for the truth behind his words. There was something he still was not telling her. She could feel it, just beneath the surface. And you're just fine with this? She pressed. With marrying someone who can't stand you? A faint shadow of a smile crossed his face again, but it did not reach his eyes. You think I don't know that? Then why act like this is all settled? She shot back. Because whether we like it or not, he said, stepping a little closer, lowering his voice, those men are already watching. And if they see cracks between us, they'll use it. Her breath caught slightly. Watching us? He gave a small nod toward the far end of the road. She followed his gaze, and for a split second she thought she saw movement near the edge of town. A figure standing too still to be just passing through. By the time she looked again, it was gone. Her heart began to beat a little faster. You're sure about this? I don't guess, he said. I know. She swallowed, the weight of everything pressing down harder now. This was not just about a forced engagement. Not just about old resentment or pride. Something bigger was closing in, something neither of them fully understood yet. And somehow they were standing right in the middle of it. She did not wait any longer. The moment that feeling settled in her chest, she turned and started walking toward her family's ranch. If men were circling their land, she needed to see it with her own eyes. Needed to know how bad things really were. He followed without asking, his boots steady against the dirt road. For once, he did not try to walk ahead of her or take the lead. He kept pace beside her, close enough to speak, but far enough to give her space. It was a small thing, but she noticed it. You should have told me sooner, she said after a while, her voice low but firm. You weren't here, he replied. You could have found a way. He shook his head. You made it clear you didn't want anything to do with this place? Or with me? She stopped walking. That don't mean I wouldn't have come if I knew my family was in trouble. His gaze softened just a fraction. I know that now. The words sat between them, heavy with everything unsaid. She looked away first and continued walking, her thoughts pulling her back to the day she left. The arguments, the sharp words, the feeling that staying would trap her into a life she did not choose. Back then, he had been part of that feeling. Always there, always tied to her future, whether she liked it or not. Now he was still here, still tied to her in a way she could not ignore. The ranch came into view as the sun dipped lower. From a distance, it looked the same. The house stood firm, the barn just beyond it, fences stretching across the land like they always had. But as they got closer, the changes began to show. A section of fence lay broken near the edge of the field. Not worn down by time, but cut clean. She walked toward it without a word, kneeling to run her fingers along the split wood. "This happened recently," she said. "2 nights ago," he answered. "Your father fixed what he could, but it keeps happening." She stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "And no one saw anything?" "Not anyone willing to speak." That did not sit right with her. This town might be quiet, but it was not blind. People saw more than they let on, which meant either they were afraid or they were choosing sides. A door creaked behind them. She turned quickly to see her father stepping out onto the porch. He looked older than she remembered, shoulders slightly bent, but his eyes were still sharp. The moment he saw her, something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or worry. "You made it," he said simply. She walked toward him, her pace slowing as she reached the steps. "You didn't tell me everything." He gave a small nod, like he expected that. "I told you what I needed to. That's not the same," she replied. He looked past her for a moment, his gaze landing on the cowboy behind her. There was a silent understanding there, something already shared between them. "You've spoken with him," her father said. "I have," she answered. "And I want the truth now." He stepped aside, gesturing for them to come in. "Then you best hear it inside." The house smelled the same as it always had. Wood, dust, and something warm that reminded her of years she tried to forget. She stood near the table while her father closed the door behind them, shutting out the fading light. "They're not just after land," he began. "They're after control? Water, cattle routes, everything that keeps this town alive." She frowned. "And you think they'll just take it?" "I think they already started," he said. "And they won't stop unless someone stands in their way." Her chest tightened. "So your answer was to pull me back and tie me into this?" "My answer was to protect what's ours," he said firmly. "And whether you like it or not, you are part of that." She opened her mouth to argue, but the words caught. Because deep down she knew he was right. This land, this fight, it was tied to her whether she accepted it or not. "And what happens if we lose?" she asked quietly. Neither man answered right away. The silence told her enough. Her gaze drifted to the window, where the last light of day was slipping away. For a brief moment, she thought she saw movement again out near the road, that same stillness, that same watching presence. This was no longer just a family matter. It was something bigger, something spreading through the town like a slow shadow. And somehow, her future was tangled up in all of it, with a man she did not trust and a fight she was not ready for. The night settled heavy over the ranch, quiet in a way that did not feel right. She stood by the window long after the lamps were lit, watching the dark stretch across the fields. Every sound felt sharper now. A distant horse shifting, the faint creak of wood, the wind brushing against the broken fence. It all carried a warning she could not ignore. "They won't wait much longer," he said from behind her. She did not turn. "You sound sure." "I am," he replied. "Men like that don't circle forever." "They push until something gives." She finally faced him, the low light casting shadows across his face. "Then we don't give." A small, almost surprised look crossed his expression, like he had not expected that answer. "That's easy to say. I didn't come back to watch everything fall apart," she said. "If they think we'll hand this over, they're wrong." Her father sat at the table, quiet but listening. "Standing your ground comes with a cost," he said. "I know," she answered, though her voice softened just a little. "But running comes with one too." The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different. Something had shifted. The fear was still there, but it was no longer alone. There was resolve now, thin but growing. Later, when the house had gone still, she stepped outside. The air was cooler, carrying that same dry scent of earth and dust. She wrapped her arms around herself and walked toward the fence line, drawn by a feeling she could not quite explain. He was already there, leaning against a post, looking out over the land like he belonged to it. Maybe he always had. You don't sleep much, do you? She said, stopping a few feet away. Not when things are like this, he replied. She nodded, then looked out across the dark fields. I used to think leaving would fix everything. And did it? He asked. She shook her head slowly. No, it just made things quieter. Not better? He glanced at her, something softer in his gaze now. You were right to want more. She let out a small breath. And you were right to stay. The words surprised both of them. For a moment, neither spoke. I never hated this place, she added after a while. I just hated feeling like I didn't have a choice. He pushed off the post, stepping a little closer. And now? She met his eyes. Now, I don't know what I feel. That truth hung between them, honest and uncertain. A sudden sound cut through the quiet. Hoofbeats. Not one horse, but several. Both of them turned at once, their attention snapping toward the far edge of the property. Shapes moved in the distance, dark against the night, coming fast and without hesitation. They're here, he said under his breath. Her heart kicked hard in her chest. How many? Enough, he answered. The ranch lights flickered as her father stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand but held low. He had been expecting this too. Inside, he called to her. She did not move. Not right away. The riders slowed as they reached the outer fence, spreading out like they knew exactly what they were doing. This was not random. This was planned. They're testing us, he said beside her. Seeing how we respond, then we don't show fear, she replied, even as her pulse raced. One of the riders moved forward, stopping just beyond the broken section of fence. He sat tall in the saddle, his presence calm in a way that made her uneasy. This was not a man who rushed. This was someone who believed he already had the upper hand. You've had time to think, the rider called out, his voice carrying easily through the night. No need to make things harder than they have to be. Her father stepped down from the porch, standing firm. This land isn't for sale? A quiet chuckle came from the rider. Everything has a price. She felt anger rise, stronger than the fear now. Without thinking, she stepped forward, coming to stand beside her father. It's not just his land, she said, her voice steady, despite everything. It's mine too. The rider's attention shifted to her. Even in the dark, she could feel his eyes on her, measuring, calculating. So you're the daughter, he said. The one who came back. A cold feeling settled in her chest. I'm not going anywhere. He studied her for a long moment, then glanced toward the cowboy standing just behind her. And you, the rider added, still playing the hero? The tension tightened like a drawn wire. No one's playing anything, he replied calmly. You're the one out of place here. For a second, it felt like everything might break. Like one wrong move would turn this into something none of them could control. The rider tilted his head slightly, then gave a slow nod. We'll see how long that confidence lasts. He turned his horse, signaling the others. One by one, they pulled back, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as they had come. But the message was clear. This was only the beginning. She stood there, her breath uneven, the weight of what was coming settling in deeper than before. And as she glanced at the man beside her, she realized something else just as unsettling. For the first time, she was not sure if he was the part of her life she needed to escape from, or the only one she could stand with when everything finally came crashing down. The riders disappeared into the dark, but sleep did not return to the ranch that night. Lamps stayed lit, boots stayed on, and every sound felt like it meant something. By morning, the sky looked the same as it always had, but nothing felt the same anymore. She stood by the fence again at first light, looking at the land that had shaped her life. The broken wood had been patched, but the mark was still there. A reminder that something had already crossed into their world. They'll come back, she said quietly. They will, he answered, standing beside her. This time, there was no argument between them. No sharp words or stubborn distance. Just truth. Her father joined them after a while, his face set, but calmer than the night before. I sent word into town, he said. We're not the only ones being pushed, she turned to him. Who else? The Millers lost part of their grazing land last week, he said. And the Carters had their water access blocked. Folks stayed quiet, hoping it would pass them by. It won't, she said. No, he agreed. Which is why they're ready to speak now. That changed things. This was not just one ranch standing alone anymore. It was a town waking up. By midday, a small group had gathered near the center of town. Men and women who had known each other for years, now standing closer than they ever had before. Voices were low but firm, stories shared, pieces of the same pattern falling into place. They're trying to take everything bit by bit, one man said. Divide us first, another added. Then take what's left. She listened, her thoughts steadying with each word. This was bigger than her past, bigger than her doubts. It was about holding on to something that mattered. He stood not far from her, speaking with a few others, his voice calm but sure. People listened to him. That was new. Or maybe she had just never seen it clearly before. When their eyes met across the crowd, something unspoken passed between them. Not anger, not resentment, understanding. By evening, a plan had taken shape. Nothing reckless, nothing rushed. Just a simple truth made stronger by numbers. They would stand together, watch the land, share what they knew. And when those men returned, they would not find scattered ranches. They would find a united front. The days that followed were tense, but different. Work went on, fences were fixed, and watch was kept. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. The fear had not disappeared, but it had changed into something steadier. Hope. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low again, she found herself back near the same fence line. This time, he joined her without a word. You've changed? He said after a moment. She smiled faintly. So have you. He nodded, then looked out over the land. I meant what I said before. About things being bigger than what we want. I know, she replied. But that don't mean we don't get a say at all. He glanced at her. And what do you say now? She took a breath, feeling the weight of everything they had been through, everything still ahead. I say I'm not running anymore, not from this place, not from this fight. And not from me? He asked quietly. She met his eyes, steady this time. That depends. A small smile touched his face, more real than any she had seen before. Fair enough. Silence settled between them again, but it was no longer heavy. It felt open, like something new had room to grow. A rider appeared in the distance then, alone this time. Both of them tensed, watching closely as he approached. But when he reached the edge of the property, he stopped, raised a hand in a simple gesture, then turned his horse and rode away without a word. A message. Not of threat, but of hesitation. She let out a slow breath. Maybe they're starting to understand. Maybe, he said. Or maybe they're just waiting. Either way, she replied, we'll be ready. He nodded. Then, after a moment, he reached out and rested his hand lightly against the fence between them. Not quite touching her, but close. She looked at it, then at him, and for once she did not pull away. The future was still uncertain. The land was still under threat, and the man she once swore she would never stand beside was now the one she trusted most in this fight. It was not the life she had planned, but standing there, with the wind moving gently across the fields and the town behind them stronger than before, she realized something simple and true. Sometimes the story you resist the most is the one that leads you exactly where